today we are going to talk more about the octet rule, valence electrons, and how we know whether or not they're going to gain or lose. And in doing so, this will get us ready for our next topic, which is bonding. So it's very important that we know whether they're going to gain or lose electrons, how many they're going to gain or lose, and what it's called when they gain or lose electrons. So in this video, we are going to talk about the octet rule. So as a reminder from when we talked about electronegativity, octet rule says if it doesn't have 8 valence electrons, it will gain or lose electrons to get to that 8. And so remember, our valence electrons are the electrons on the outermost energy level. And looking at the periodic table, we know how many valence electrons there are because of these numbers up top. It goes 1, 2, and then on the other half of the periodic table, it goes 3 through 8. And so everything below this 1, hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium, they all have 1 valence electron. Same with over here on the 8, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon, they all have 8 valence electrons. And so this 8 column right here, they're already at that 8 valence electrons, so they're actually pretty special, and these guys are called our noble gases. So our noble gases don't need to gain or lose valence electrons to get to 8 because they already have it. Everything else will need to do so. Looking at the periodic table, how do we know whether or not it's going to gain or lose electrons? Well, if we draw a line down 4, everything to the right is going to gain, and everything to the left is going to lose. So if it has 1, 2, or 3 valence electrons, it's going to lose. And if it has 5, 6, or 7, it is going to gain electrons. And so if it has 1, 2, or 3 valence electrons, it's going to lose because it's faster to lose 1, 2, or 3 than it would be to gain 5, 6, or 7. And then if it has more than 4, so 5, 6, or 7 valence electrons, it will actually gain electrons to get to 8 because it is already close to having 8, so it's easier to gain 1, 2, or 3 rather than lose a whole bunch. Looking at elements and like the Lewis dot structures, how do we know if it's going to gain or lose? Well, if we look at oxygen on the periodic table is right there. If we count how many valence electrons are on the Lewis dot structure of oxygen, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 valence electrons means it is going to gain. It's going to gain 2 to get to 8 because it has 6. Our next element is sodium. How many valence electrons does sodium have? Well, if we count the electrons on the Lewis dot structure of sodium, that tells us it has 1 valence electron. And so we know from our periodic table, if it has 1, 2, or 3 valence electrons, it is going to lose. And so sodium will lose. And it will lose that 1 valence electron it has. So just a recap, if an atom doesn't have 8 valence electrons, it will gain or lose electrons to get to 8. If it has 1, 2, or 3 valence electrons, it's going to lose those to get to 8 valence electrons. And if it has 5, 6, or 7, it's going to gain those valence electrons. It's going to gain electrons to get to the 8 valence electrons. And if it has 8, that means it is all good to go.